You know, gaming has been evolving for decades, but what if I told you we're on the verge of its biggest shift yet? We're talking about blockchain gaming, and it's this whole new frontier that promises to completely rewrite the rules of what we own online and what it even means to play a game.
Seriously, think about it for a second. All those hours you poured into a game, grinding for that one epic item. What if that item had real, actual value outside of the game? What if you, not the company, truly owned it? That's the game-changing question at the heart of this entire movement.
All right, so here's how we're going to break it all down. We'll start with the big promise, then get into what these games actually are. We're going to look at the insane market growth, face some of the tough realities and challenges, and finally, take a peek at what the future of play could look like.
So what's the big idea here? This isn't just about fancier graphics or a new story. Nope. This is a complete shift in how we even think about the stuff we collect in our virtual worlds.
You know how it is. For as long as we've been gaming, all our digital items, our armor, our skins, our hard-earned loot, they've all been trapped inside these walled gardens. You might have paid for it, but the game company always holds the keys. Well, the big promise of blockchain is to tear down those walls and give you, the player, true, undeniable ownership.
Okay, true ownership sounds amazing, right? But how does it actually work? Let's cut through the hype and the buzzwords and see what's really going on under the hood.
It really boils down to one key concept: digital ownership. Your in-game items become something called NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. Just think of an NFT like a digital deed of ownership for your item. It's unique, it's provable, and it's recorded on the blockchain, which is basically a giant public ledger proving that that sword is yours and only yours.
And this chart, it lays out the difference perfectly. In a traditional game, you're basically just licensing an item. With blockchain gaming, you own it. Trading goes from being stuck in one game's little shop to being on open markets. And the biggest deal of all? The economy shifts from being controlled by the company to being driven by the players. And that gives your items real-world value.
So, you can probably guess what happens next. When there's a shift this massive, the money follows. And boy, did it ever. This isn't just a cool idea, it's a full-on gold rush happening right now.
First, just to get a sense of the scale here, let's talk about the audience. By 2025, we're looking at over 3.5 billion gamers on the planet. That is a gigantic, tech-savvy community that already gets virtual economies, which makes them the perfect audience for this whole new way of playing.
And this isn't some far-off prediction. The money is already here. All the way back in 2022, blockchain gaming was already a nearly $5 billion industry. That's a massive financial footprint. And that was before it even came close to hitting the mainstream.
And if you want to see what investor confidence looks like, well, this is it. The amount of money that flooded into this space from 2022 to 2024 just completely dwarfs what came before. We're talking about a huge wave of belief from some really big players that this is where gaming is headed.
All that cash has to go somewhere, right? Well, it's fueled an absolute explosion in development. We're not talking about just a few little indie games. There are almost 5,000 blockchain games being built right now on major networks. That shows a massive commitment from developers to build out this ecosystem. Okay, so we've seen the hype, we've seen the mind-boggling numbers, but let's get real for a minute. What's actually happening on the ground? This gold rush hasn't been without its problems. In fact, the industry is facing some pretty serious growing pains. Now, don't get me wrong, the opportunities are still absolutely massive. This tech could totally transform mobile gaming, shake up how esports work, and even change how we learn with educational games. The potential is still huge. But, and this is a big but, here comes the reality check. Those first play-to-earn games had a really big flaw. Their economies were super fragile. They were basically built on pure hype, and when the hype died down, so did the value, which left a lot of players holding digital items that were suddenly worthless. And that brings us to the biggest roadblocks holding this all back. For one, the user experience can be really clunky. Most gamers just don't want to mess around with crypto wallets and gas fees. The tech itself can be slow and expensive. And like we just talked about, a lot of the early game economies just weren't built to last. But honestly, the biggest hurdle of all? Forgetting the golden rule. A game has to be fun first. If it feels more like a job than a good time, it's already lost.
So, with all these challenges, you might be wondering, is this whole thing doomed? Well, not necessarily. So how does the industry actually move forward from here? What does a healthy, sustainable future for these games even look like?
Well, the path forward seems to boil down to 4 really crucial steps.
First, and this is the most important one, fun. First, build an amazing game where the blockchain stuff is just a tool in the background. Second, make the tech invisible. Simplify it. Third, build more stable, hybrid economies. And finally, keep investing in the core infrastructure to make everything faster, cheaper, and ready for millions of players.
You know, the end goal, the real dream here, is a future where we don't even say blockchain game anymore. You just say you're playing a great game that also happens to give you true ownership of your stuff. The technology should be this quiet, powerful engine in the background that makes the experience better without ever getting in the way.
So at the end of the day, the potential to fundamentally change how we relate to the games we love is absolutely undeniable. But the challenges, the tech, the design, the economics, are just as real. The big question we're left with is whether this is the real next level for gaming or just a very risky, very fascinating side quest.